إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونتوب إليه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. It's always very, very hard to choose a theme to discuss for the Friday services. It's an obligation for every khatib to be in tune with the emotional and spiritual reality of the community and the country to be able to make sure that the topic is relevant. It is hard enough to try to find one of these, but when the reality of the world and the community in general thrusts a calamity and a catastrophe in front of us, quite frankly, it makes the choice a little easier. And I think this mass shooting of all of these kids in Texas, at least for me personally, hit a chord that's very, very deep emotionally. And I've been struggling. I've been struggling with the news. I've been agonizing over how I handle it. And I have a sense of communicating that is rather direct. So I don't think I have a good answer. The best I can say is I am at a loss, and I am unable to find some figment of anything, of reason or emotions or anything to hang on to, so I can empathize and I can connect with the loss, with the tragedy, with the size of the catastrophe and the calamity that we are experiencing every time one of these things goes out. And when I get lost like this, I have a tendency to run back to the Quran and the Hadith and let them take my hand and find maybe that they can speak to me with the voice of something that is directly relevant to the suffering and the hardship. So I found this Hadith, which I want, inshallah ta'ala, in the hope of having it help me and help all of us to make it the theme of our conversation, and inshallah ta'ala try to learn something from it. A, in terms of coping, and B, in terms of lasting lessons and values. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: العبادة في وقت الحرج كهجرة إلى رسول الله. صدق رسول الله. It's very hard to translate, but in short, it says the following. So I know I'm not doing it justice in translating it in English, but in short, it says the following thing: finding refuge in prayer and worship at the time of catastrophe and calamity is like making hijrah to go to live with the Prophet ﷺ at the time where the world had collapsed around him and he had to relocate in Medina. I don't know. It just did something to me. And it's that same thing that it did to me that hopefully I will do it justice, inshallah ta'ala, in doing with it what it deserves to be done with it. First, I consider it to be an extraordinary piece of eloquence, insight, and wisdom. It speaks to something that is both intuitive and very profound. All of us in our lives, we experience caretaking. It doesn't matter who you are, individual, head of a household, starting a family, living with only two people. It doesn't matter what it is. At some point, we have caretaking responsibilities. Even in the most mundane things in our lives. Maybe you take care of a house plant or something into your backyard or your front yard. And it's a very humbling experience to be a caretaker. That plant requires its fair share of light, clement weather, watering. If you starve it, it's supposed to be watered daily. If you starve it for an entire week or 10 days and then give it 10 parts of the water it's supposed to have because you're catching up with it, it'll die. It just die because that's not the rhythm of its cycle to keep its life and to keep healthy and nurtured the way it is. And I think that to me, that's exactly what this hadith is about. The community life, the assault that's on us all the time, puts us in a position where we buy small debts. And then the ibadah comes, and it injects life into a body, and it can restore who we are and what we do and how much we hurt and what we need to do to get to where it is. And so Allah prescribed devotion, His love, His worship as a form of getting out of this conundrum. The second thing that He describes is this thing that is called waqt al-haraj. The scholars of hadith have a lot of commentary about this particular one, and a particular hadith that explains this further, it's precisely about loss of life. It's a qatl. So al-haraj is a synonymous word in the Arabic language of sort of being witness to carnage and loss of life. So in me, just in this discussion of today, I would say that for the Prophet ﷺ being our teacher, our guide, providing us with healing and direction, is important. So we need to listen. So we listen to what? I really honestly think that the weak, the voiceless, the vulnerable, and the people who are exposed today in this world are losing their voices and nobody speaks for them anymore. I mean, it's just incredible when you look around us all the way through. You have this thing in Davos, in the World Economic Forum, where a number of elites get around the dinner table and they have these wonderful things and eating ice cream and thinking about, I don't know what about the world, but they are not grounded in the reality of our suffering. These people don't understand what pain is. Most of them are born with silver spoons in their mouth. They don't understand what it is to live in a cardboard. They don't understand what it is to hurt. They don't understand what it is to not have a meal in front of you the next day. This COVID pandemic, 15 million lives lost around the world. Few of the countries have recovered. The rest of the world is in total catastrophe. Threat of livelihood, threat of health, threat of sustenance, threat of future, just a total catastrophe. And these sidebar discussions are going all over the place. Because this human condition that we have to protect, this gift that Allah has given us, is finding less and less authentic voices that speak for it, that deserve to stand up in public forum and be an authentic voice for it. And that is the hallmark of the Prophet ﷺ. He is the voice of the voiceless. He speaks truth for the people who suffer. He can express what nobody else can for other people. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, "Inna bayna yaday as-sa'a," when this hour comes close to us, ayyaman, it's just a few days, yurfa'u fiha al-ilm. It's a time that will come where really knowledge is not there. What you have is you have the world that is populated with talking heads. وَيَزِينُ فِيهَا الْجَهْلِ. Ignorance will become predominant, which is basically what we see around us. وَيَكْثُرُ فِيهَا الْحَرَجِ. We see this calamity and this catastrophe around us. And the Prophet ﷺ described that as a sad state of things. I think that the one thing that we have in common, which is basically that makes us human, our humanity, is to be able to feel for others the same thing that we feel for ourselves. So what's the problem? What's the real problem we have in this country? When you think about it, racism exists everywhere. And make no mistake about it, it's not like there are some Muslim communities that don't have racism amongst them. It's a dirty secret, and we all know about that. So racism exists everywhere. Poverty exists everywhere. Violence is an expression that you see in every community. And so is the world with inequity, the lack of health conditions, corrupt politicians, and terrible elites. So what's wrong? What's different here with this story in Texas and in Buffalo and in other places? What's different? There is nowhere else in the world that when people come unhinged, they pick up a gun and go shoot everybody else. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. You want to think about what's different? That's what's different. That is extremely disturbing. And I personally went through it several times. As a founder and a starter of a number of schools, Islamic schools, when I had children under my watch and my custody, whenever there would be a crisis like this, first I start with a sleepless night, tomorrow morning I'm out on a school ground at 5 and 6 a.m., and then I can't function, I can't go to school because I'm guarding, standing watch to make sure that children do not come in harm's way. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I've seen statistics of these mass shootings. When we got plotted as the United States against any other country, we don't register. The others, they do not register on the bar graph. And the way that people deal with this is to talk about it as being maybe a problem of mental health or maybe a problem of I don't know what. No, I don't accept this premise. Because it's not a problem of mental health or other things. It's a problem that I think from this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, there are maybe 3 things that we can do collectively together, and I'll use them, and on that, inshallah, it will be the balance in the khutbah, and we close on them. So the first one is whenever there is spiritually bankrupt communities and spiritual bankruptcy exists in a community, we will never find our way. So I'm going to repeat that again slowly. Because there is this thing about materialist society, that the way we think that things can be under control is we throw at them resources, money, enforcement, and hopefully reasonable policy. Good, but not good enough. As long as a community doesn't have God in its heart and it's not spiritually literate and oriented, it doesn't matter what you keep doing, you are basically building on a foundation that has no merit for its future. Think about the adab of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Sick, in his deathbed, loses his mobility, he is unable to stand by himself. He demands, when the time of the prayer comes out, for 2 of his companions to be on either side so he can lean on them and go in order to attend the prayer. He wasn't worried about leaving behind a constitution. He wasn't worried about leaving behind a playbook on economic prosperity. He was not leaving anxious about not leaving behind a legacy of something so we can write poetry about it when he dies. He was concerned in leaving this world that his community will come unhinged from its spiritual orientation. Because if it loses that, then it loses everything. Its identity, its life, its orientation, its purpose, its meaning, its vocation, its values, everything comes apart. And so, sick on his deathbed, he would still demand to stand up and look over the shoulder to see, oh my God, they are praying. They will be safe. They are praying, so they will be safe. That's the meaning of the hadith. They are praying, they are engaged in ibadah, so they are protected and they are likely to be safe. So for this spiritual literacy I really, really advise us to think very, very carefully and see if we can make it a benefit and a gift for others as well. I'll share with you one say from a very important scholar, Al-Waqidi, who said the following thing. إن التقوى أن تزين سرك للحق كما زينت ظاهرك للخلق. If you want to think about what it means to be spiritually engaged and spiritually rich, is when your inside reality facing Allah is measured by the same standard as your outside reality facing people to impress upon them the image of who you are. Because if many of us adhered to that particular standard, then a lot less of this carnage and calamity will be here today. So as Muslims, we have an obligation in our behavior, in teaching others, in modeling how we live our lives, in doing what we are supposed to do, is to live this life where our internal orientation and our external reality are aligned in a way that is based on the foundation of a relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When this is the foundation, then it will bear the weight of many other things to come. The second piece of advice from the hadith that I think is very, very, very important to keep attention to. An inward reality that is not manifesting itself outside, it's like keeping the best kept secret, and it means that it's going to go wasted and it will not affect any others. So there is this thing about, and I love this, it's one of the most amazing go-to hadiths that I go to all the time. There's something crazy about the human hubris, like this belief in the human being Superman. Very, very, very bad idea. عن حذيفة أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله أوحى إلي. So Hudayfa was witness when the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم told him about the Hadith Qudsi, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just told him the following thing. So this is what Allah said to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم to go say. أنذر قومك, go out and warn your people. أن لا يدخلوا بيت من بيوتي, that none of them should step in one of my houses of worship. Let me take this very slowly again, because if there is one thing that we want to remember from today's khutbah, it's going to be this hadith. So the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah told him in the Hadith Qudsi, I want you to go and warn people that if there is one of them, here we are talking about Muslims practicing, coming to the mosque and whatnot, that if one of them is going to come to attend one of the services in my houses of worship, وَلِأَحَدٍ عِنْدَهُمْ مَظْلَمًا, so the person who's coming, male or female, is coming to pray while they are responsible for having oppressed somebody else. It's like they didn't check out their burdened persona at the gate. They are coming with their baggage inside the place. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah told him the following thing. فَإِنِّي أَلْعَنُهُ مَا دَامَ قَائِمًا, as long as that person is standing in prayer with the other people praying, then I as God, I am cursing him. بين يدي وهو يصلي, as long as he is between my hands and I am witnessing him in his prayer. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah told him the following thing. And then he realizes that he has done something wrong, that person. So he goes out and tries to right the wrong. If they have harmed somebody else, they go and try to fix that. So what do they become? فَيَكُونُ, so that person who does this, مِنْ أَوْلِيَاءِ وَأَصْفِيَاءِ, if they are people who accept responsibility and go fix the harm that they have done, so they will become, that person will become amongst the ones that are very close to me. وَيَكُونُ جَارِي, and I will make him my neighbor, مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّقِينَ. On the day of judgment, I will throw him very close to me, and I will make him amongst الشهداء في الجنة, and I will make him amongst the witnesses that come into the heavens. So what is this about? This is an important hadith that sets the spiritual orientation that we talked about. Say that, for example, somebody is spiritually bankrupt, they are empty. That's catastrophic. But say that somebody has improved from spiritually bankruptcy, they at least have an orientation. They are spiritually oriented around something. Well, that's not a blank check to go and just run with it. It obeys certain standards. And the standard is, if a spiritual orientation doesn't have a social dimension for social equity and justice, it has no meaning. That's a big lesson. That means that the way we attain salvation, it's not by becoming hermits and monks. The way we attain salvation is by making sure that we spread justice and equity amongst other people. That's a very, 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 very powerful idea of social responsibility. The third one is, how do we deliver it? The way that we deliver it as Muslims, we deliver it through humility. We deliver it through humility. So let me share with you a little story of humility. After the Prophet ﷺ died, a lot of people used to come to visit Medina. And because they were outsiders, they heard about legendary names, but they don't know people's faces. So one day, one of these traders that came from outside Medina arrives to the city of Medina, buys some goods, didn't have a ride, so he needed to hire someone in order to carry the goods for him. So he saw a man sitting next to the market, and he said, I need help, would you please carry those goods with me? The man obliges, stands up, carries the heavy load, starts walking behind the other one, and on their way they go. And every few steps, this strange man who came to visit Medina and bought all of these goods is hearing the people on the side of the street greet the carrier behind him, Assalamu alayka ya Abi Abd al-Rahman. Well, that's a little strange. You can't be that popular when you are somebody carrying and doing this particular job. So he witnesses this the second time, and then the third time, and then he turns to him and he says, who are you? And the man answers, I'm just here to help you. He didn't say, I am, and here is my resume, and wash out who you're talking to. He says, I'm just here to help you. So the stuff repeats again, and then the man couldn't handle it anymore. So he goes to one of the people who greeted him, and he says, who is this? Wherever I go, people are greeting him. Oh, this is Salman al-Farisi. Whoa. Whoa. Salman al-Farisi? Nobody knows who that is? This is a man who came from Persia, from Mesopotamia, who was destined to be a high priest into Zoroastrian religion. Then, who went on a spiritual quest to find Christianity, studied it, and then went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I want to learn from you, and then became a Muslim. A man through whom we have the hadith, a man, this Medina that we go and visit where the Prophet ﷺ is buried, had he not protected it in Ghazwat al-Khandaq, it wouldn't be here. This is who we are talking about. And he saw it in him. He saw it in him to be befitting of him that when a stranger comes to our city and he has a heavy load, I'm nobody, I'm just here to help. This type, this kind, this persona, this sense of humility is what makes a Muslim a Muslim. This is the sense of humility that makes a Muslim Muslim. It's not the amount of service. It's not, I heard once a story which was absolutely unbelievable. It was about Sheikh Sha'rawi. This is a man who, the study circle, in his daily and weekly tafsir of the Quran was attended by thousands of people. Thousands of people would attend. One of his students one day came in after he passed, and they were remembering him or who he was. He said, I went to him and I asked him for eternal advice. So give me a piece of advice that will stay with me. He told him, you see that whole thing of the popularity in front of the 5,000 or 10,000 people that attend the study circle, it means nothing. It means nothing. The only thing that is worthwhile is, have you invested few rak'ahs in tahajjud at night? Humility, right? Humility, the critical character of what happened. Because if we had this, then the idea of you reaching out to a gun to go and take other people, that idea will never cross your mind. Because you are a product of humility. There is always a way to go and find something in that. And the fourth one, and the last one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His infinite wisdom, in giving us this beloved Prophet, gave him to us as a gift, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam shared with us this final hadith on which I conclude today's khutbah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "An Anas qala qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إذا أراد الله بعبد خيرا." When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes well for someone, استعمله, Allah would put that person to work. قالوا, so they said, وكيف يستعمله? So how does Allah put someone to work? قال يوفقه لعمل صالح قبل موته. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make that person do a righteous deed before they live this life. A righteous deed before they live this life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through this particular verse, has democratized access to His blessings. Democratized access to His blessings. All it takes is a righteous deed, whatever that is and whatever that might be. And when that takes place, inshallah ta'ala, we will see that the world will become a better place. We can heal the suffering of other people. There will be less violence in this world. And more importantly, there will be more of an opportunity for light to show and the darkness of ignorance to start going away. And you want to link it back to the first hadith that I started with? What is the reward of people who choose the right worship at the right time is equivalent to migrating back to the Prophet ﷺ. That's what it means to migrate back to the Prophet ﷺ. Is to restore in people the light that the Prophet ﷺ was trying to turn on in people's hearts before he left this life, and he left it to us as a responsibility. So generation after generation, we can take that responsibility and we turn that light in our hearts and in our neighbors and in our families and in our communities at large, because when that light goes around, then there is little room for darkness to exist amongst us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيفوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. This is actually a perfect segue to the few words I want to say before we come, inshallah ta'ala, to the prayer and to the dua. One of the ways in which we can make a significant and very potent change in the lives of people is to multiply the houses of worship where we always have an opportunity to call a house of worship our home. And today we are very privileged to have amongst us a group of people that came to us from the West Borough area, in the area that is known as the boroughs, West Borough, North Borough, Mount Borough, etc., and who have done a phenomenal job in 1 year. They found a vacuum between two communities where it was very hard to go and commute in order to provide the Islamic services. They started with the small musalla, very quickly increased it. the demand overflew, and subhanallah, they modeled a lot of the characteristics that I talked about today. Selflessly, without credit, without fanfare, without asking for anything, just hard work, hard work, dedicated with the intention of doing what is right for the community and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they went and plowed through everything to get something started. I attend some of the services. I am amazed at how many people attendees go in there. Stable families, areas that has excellent school systems, and now, subhanallah, Allah has come to lend His support to them, provided them with a property, a piece of land, ready to go for that. But at some point, like is the case with all of us, we need help. And one of the ideas I like very much about the small mosques as opposed to the large ones is this idea that when you build a large mosque, you basically build a boat anchor around your neck. You have to worry about operational cost. You have to worry about how are you going to support it for the long run. When you build the small ones, they are affordable. You can start small, and then you can afford them, and they can stay with you. So today, they have come because they believe so much in you as a community that can help them. They have a table outside. So I beseech you and plead for you, inshallah ta'ala, that on your way out, if you would be so kind, and see it fit in your heart, inshallah, that you can contribute anything you possibly can to this project. Your funds, your resources, your time, your connection, whatever you can would be extremely appreciated, and you would have done a tremendous service to this community. And as you all remember, contributing for building a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala falls into the category of a sadaqah jariyah, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from you. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا الا غفرته ولا هما الا فرجته ولا دينا الا قضيته ولا مريضا الا شفيته ولا مبتلا الا عافيته ولا ضالا الا هديته ولا غائبا الا رددته ولا مظلوما الا نصرته ولا اسيرا الا فككته ولا ميتا الا رحمته. عباد الله، اوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله واقم الصلاه ان الصلاه تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
Those of you who are at the back, if you could go to your right, please just complete the rows by going to your right. Just complete the rows by going to your right, inshallah. Are we good? Allahu Akbar.